Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the second part of my technically should you pull but not quite should you pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now in this video I'm going to be talking about Dimensions End Transcendance, exactly what it is and exactly how this first event with its name is going to happen and exactly what kind of characters are going to work with it. Now there is a banner that comes along with this and I've already made a video for it and it's all about Gabranth, so if you want to learn about Gabranth, what he does, whether you should pull for him, etc., then go back and check out my Should You Pull video for Gabranth. But if you're interested in learning more about Dimensions End Transcendance in general, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Now before we get started, as always, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below. I actually have a Twitter poll going on right now for the next week, because this time last year I asked everybody what they wanted to see from this channel, because it's been a year since I started streaming properly over on Twitch, and I've kind of tried to spread my wings and do some other stuff. So I've done a lot of Final Fantasy XIV, I've started my FF Count Up project, I did a fair amount of Smash Bros for a while, I've done loads of other things, and I want to hear from you guys as to what kinds of things you enjoyed from this past year, so I know whether to continue or what to continue with and what you guys like, etc. So definitely check out the link in the description box below and cast your votes on there. It would be lovely to hear from you. There is an option on there for those of you that just kind of want to see Dissidia content from me, but secretly well, it's not even secretly anymore, I'm kind of hoping that that doesn't do as well as the other options, because I want to kind of expand and spread my wings and do other things as well as Opera Omnia, not necessarily replacing it but on top of it. So definitely cast your votes and let me know how you guys think. And then with regards to Patreon, I always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a new video, and today that person is going to be Goose, who is one of my more recent followers on Patreon and is a big fan of Deleta, as shown by their title card at the bottom there. So if you would like to be a part of Patreon, I give massive thanks to every single person on my Patreon, including Goose, of course. So if you're interested in getting a title card, other benefits such as voice chats we all do together, and being a part of Would You Pull on my Should You Pull videos, then perhaps you might want to consider becoming a patron yourself. Don't forget to check out all of the other content creators out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia and all of the other resources available as well. And I want to give a special mention to Tonberry Troupe, who has a fantastic guide on DE Transcendance and pretty much everything, like all written content. They do a fantastic job of all of that, so I definitely encourage you to check that link in the description box below, especially if you want to learn more about DE Transcendance. So before we go into Dimensions End Transcendance 1, we're going to actually just quickly discuss what Dimensions End Transcendance is as a whole and how it's different from the Dimensions End Entropy that we've played up until this point for the last 20 months. Now, Dimensions End Transcendance is treated a little bit differently, whereas we kind of got DE Entropy alongside other events. DE Transcendance is treated more like an event, first things first, where instead of just having the one event where it's permanent content, you do get the permanent content, which is the gates, which we'll discuss in just a moment, but you also get a typical event that comes along with it, with a Cosmos, a Chaos stage, co-ops, and then you get you can get gems, tickets, that kind of thing from that. There's also a Chaos challenge where you can earn a burst token, and then the actual DE event itself also provides burst tokens as well. Now, first things first, I want to show you some screenshots here that have come from people in my Discord, so big shout outs to So-chan and Mithril Jojo for these, very, very, very appreciated. Basically, what you can see here is the actual Dimensions End Transcendence. All of these are Lufenia difficulty missions and therefore have Lufenia difficulty orbs that you'll need to look after during each one of these. And you'll notice that this looks a little bit different to how Entropy did. So there are 3 gates or crucibles to each event, and each of these is a different fight. Now, the same thing applies from Entropy to Transcendence, but it's actually slightly more strict than it was before, because in order to unlock the middle branch, or the third one, you need to have finished the other 2 gates. And the same thing applies to Transcendence as it did with Entropy, where you cannot use the same character twice. You can use the same calls over each gate, you can use the same summon over each gate, but you can't use the same character twice. So in this particular instance, this image from Mithril Jojo here, a lot of some of these are taken from later on in the game, because characters have come in from later on in the game, because these guys have taken screenshots from their current state in the game, so ignore exactly who the characters are, but the general sort of thing still applies. So on the left side, you've got Cecil, Noel, and Rude, who are tackling one side, and then on the second gate, on the right-hand side, you have Edward, Ramza, and Kais. So in order to unlock the third gate, you need to have finished these two with 6 different characters rather than 3, and then that then unlocks the third one in the middle, which is the final stage, which is even harder, and you have to use a party which is comprised of the 6 units that you used for the other 2. So in this case, Myth Jojo has used Edward, Cecil and Ramza. So you're going to have to kind of cater to the fact that you have to use 6 characters and have 6 characters ready to use for that are viable for Lufenia content. And then the other thing you'll notice as well is that the rocks themselves on the left and right hand side have little stone colours in them next to them. So the left one in this case has a white stone and the one on the right has a blue one. You have to have at least one character of that crystal colour in order to be able to complete that stage. So you have to have, like on the white crystal side, that is obviously Paladin Cecil, and on the blue side you obviously got characters that are like Kais there that are blue crystals that can combine, and then you go down the middle. So basically, synergy is also slightly different here as well. So again, we're going to go to another image here as well of the party shot, and as you can see, this is taken up by the 2 parties. So there are only 6 characters there to be chosen from, but there are characters there that can be used. And again, ignore the high armor plus and everything because it does come from later on in the game. We'll get to that when we get to it. But you'll notice that Ramza's burst weapon has a synergy glow to it. What this means is that you need to, in order to have synergy stats across your party, you're going to want to bring a burst with you. So this is kind of the content that bursts are expected for. There are plenty of people who have cleared these without a burst, but believe me, having a burst is going to make your life significantly easier because it's just one of those things. And having synergy stats across your whole party by having a burst in your party is going to make a huge difference to you. Now, with each of the branches, like the rewards that are permanent, you will get 500 gems for clearing each gate, or crucible, however you want to call it. There's a burst token that you get 3 of at the end once you finish the final gate, and you get high armor tokens for each one as well. So it adds up to basically 3 Lufenia and Chaos challenges worth of rewards, and it's permanent content. And because it's permanent content, don't panic too much if you end up having to come back to it later when you have stronger characters, because it's still there. It's not going anywhere. There are a lot of limited rewards, like tickets and gems and pages and nuggets and stuff, but they're all related to like the Cosmos co-ops or like Chaos missions, things like that, and the Chaos challenge is limited as well. So like I said, DE Transcendance is treated more like an event than DE Entropy was, but then you get this permanent content at the end that if you're not ready to tackle it straight away, you can come back to it later. So now let's talk about Dimensions End Transcendence 1. So we're going to go through each gate individually as if we were talking about a Lufenia event of any other kind, but because there's more than one of them, this is why I decided to make a separate video for this alongside Gabrant's Should You Pull video. So to start with the left side, so this is against 2 target snipers, which we've seen before, but they've still got a lot of very, very strong things. They do a lot of like AoE, brave HPs, and they also have an aura that they gain that reduces any bravery damage that they take to 1, and they have to be broken in order to get them out of that. And if you don't break them, then they're probably just going to kill you outright. So basically, instant break is like a very, very primary thing for this, and you have to remember that obviously Gabranth is the banner character that goes with this, and so therefore his shtick is a lot of instant break. However, instant break doesn't actually have anything to do with the Lufenia orb or anything like that. The Lufenia orb is an elemental one for holy damage, and so you're going to need a holy enchanter or holy enchant imperiler, of which realistically there's only Paladin Cecil and Kuja. Now, Paladin Cecil is a character that 90% of people have pulled for, but he is basically hard required in some way, and these are very strict missions. And I will say that now, like Holy Enchant Imperiler, you're going to need one. You can do this with Kuja, but it's going to be a lot harder than it would have been if you used Paladin Cecil, simply because your damage output is going to be higher. You're going to, like, due to his LD effect, you're going to have the overheal HP so you can take certain attacks more. It's just... And because they like throw out these AoE Brave HPs as frequently as they do, Kuja isn't going to keep you alive from that. So if you are going to be using Kuja and you want to clear DE Transcendence as early as possible, that's going to be a reason for you to want to pull Gabranth. but Paladin Cecil will help here. If Paladin Cecil's not the character that is carrying a burst, then you might want to consider bringing Ramza along to this, because Ramza has an instant break in his shout, and therefore it's going to help a lot with this, especially considering that only one of the enemies will ever gain the aura that reduces their brave damage to 1 at a time, so Ramza can deal with that as best as possible. So past that, you're going to want to keep yourself protected more than anything, so characters like Arciela and Kefka will help here because they have HP, attack, disable, and because Kefka actually does have instant break in his EX as well. But if you're using Kefka as your alternate, then I definitely recommend bringing somebody like Ramza or Gabrantha along as well, because relying on Kefka's EX alone for any kind of timing specific thing is always going to be difficult. You can also circumvent this with cool abilities, so you've got Jack who has instant break, you have Caius who has instant break, you have other options that you can bring along with you in order to add to having all of the HP, attack, disables, making sure that they don't keep that aura so that they get an attack off, and basically you just kind of want to get through this as much as possible, and you have to bear in mind the characters that you're going to want to take to obviously the 3rd tier in order to be able to clear that. So Paladin Cecil is basically a must for this if you have him. If you don't have him, there are clears online that don't use him, but he's definitely going to be in my recommended team here because your life will just be that much easier for having him across the board for DE Transcendance 1. So now we move on to the right-hand side, the right-hand gate for DET1, and it's going to be against Jewel Turtles. Now, Jewel Turtles strike fear into the hearts of men for those of you who've played for a long time, back in the day when Ace was a thing, and we started seeing the turtles in general. They are a nightmare to deal with, and these are no exception. But launching is the name of the game with this particular crucible. So basically, the Jewel Turtles, if you've ever fought any of the turtle enemies before, you'll know that they retreat into their shell, gain a buttload of bravery, and then come out with a massive attack. And it's not something that ever turns out pleasant. Well, this time around they do that, gain a massive amount of bravery, and reduce any bravery damage they take to 1 until they are launched. So you need to launch them not only for this, but the Lufenia Orb requires that you have launch in your party as well, because that's the criteria for the Lufenia Orb as well. So you get 8 turns every time you launch an enemy. And for this reason, there are obvious picks when it comes to your team building here. So you're going to want Cloud, who also covers the blue crystal requirement of it. You're going to want, if you have Kais, he is a godsend here, because not only does he have the launch capabilities and the ability to give launch to others, having his LD buff will keep you safer in general, and his Brave Plus during launches counters the Brave gains as well. Ramza, again, absolute all-star here because he has launch capabilities in his LD, and because it's very restrictive on what you can do with his LD because he only has so many uses of it, you will want a secondary launch to go with him. But he has Shout as well still, which gives you the instant break and counters that Brave reduction aura, and obviously Gabranth would do the same thing. However, if you have Gabranth, I would suggest you put him in the left-hand crucible rather than the right-hand one. You can also make use of Kryl if you have her. She's also a blue crystal if you wanted to use someone like Dark Knight Cecil instead of Cloud. If you want to have a Cecil run, you can put Paladin Cecil in one, Dark Knight Cecil in the other, and then that's kind of cool. But Kryl is obviously very strong alongside Cloud as well, particularly for his burst effect and being able to just keep revamping everything. When the enemies use their signature attack, so I can't remember, it duel something, they retreat into their shell and they remove their debuffs, they gain all their bravery, and they receive reduced HP damage on top of it. But again, this is countered by launching, so basically as long as you stay on top of all the launches, you should be fine. So you just have to keep on top of that, and then this one, again, it's not easy, but as long as you have the right characters for it, you can stay on top of it. The difficulty with DE Transcendance is how strict the requirements are to do it. It's a case of whether you have the characters or you don't. And then finally, we have the final tier. So this is going to be, as I said earlier, made up of the 6 characters that you've used for the other 2 crucibles. So whoever you bring to those 2, make sure that you're prepared to want to use 3 out of those 6 characters to tackle the final one. And the final one is hard. It is not nice. I've seen a lot of clears, I've spoken to a lot of players about it, and a lot of people have said this is one of the harder missions that they've come across in the entire game, on the back of the Wave 2 and the Flame Masks. So basically, this is a 2-wave Lufenia fight. Both waves have a Lufenia orb of their own. So the first wave is the effects, which you may have seen from Ultimecia's event in the past. And these have a Lufenia orb that is quite classic, starts at the start of the fight, comes away at 80% HP, comes back at 50% HP, and basically in order to push the orb back, you have to inflict 2 or more debuffs in 1 turn. So that can be 1 debuff per enemy, but because you don't have, like, it only increases it by 2 turns, it basically means you're going to need debuffing pretty regularly in order to be able to keep on top of this. Otherwise, you're just going to have to throw as much as you physically have at this, and you'll have less for wave 2, which is honestly the scarier one of the two. And like they used to do with Ultimecia's event, when they reach certain HP thresholds, they both gain an aura that massively gains their bravery, and just like the other events as well, they get an aura that reduces their bravery damage taken to 1. It also, this time around, actually reduces the HP damage they take massively as well, and you basically have to instant break them in order to get rid of it. So characters like Gabranth again, Ramza again, they're going to be the ones that you really want to keep an eye on, or Kefka, because basically what this event wants you to do is to make it the easiest it can be for itself, is for you to have all of the characters that have been featured since Paladin Cecil. So Kais is obviously the launch one, Paladin Cecil is the holy damage dealer for the first wave, and then Gabranth is your instant breaker. So basically having all 3 of them will make it easier for you in the long run. But that's not to say that they're the only characters you can use, because they're not. But they also basically, like, the effects also throw HP and bravery attacks at you, like, pretty regularly. You've got to be able to keep yourself healthy, so that's why Paladin Cecil is quite so prevalent. However, like I said again, he's not mandatory. If you don't have him, I have seen clears that use Jack, Arciela, and Ramza. Like, there are plenty of clears out there. There aren't loads of them that don't have Cecil, but there's quite a lot of them that don't have Gabranth or Kais. So just keep an eye out for those. Like, Ramza is an absolute all-star here. Like I said earlier, he has launch, he has the instant break, he's got a lot of the things that you need in order to take this out. So you should be able to get through that wave just by staying on top of those auras and making sure that they don't get too many turns without you wanting them to. And then wave 2 is the dreaded flame masks. Now the flame masks have an aura, like their Lufenia orb is, so it freezes, so it never ticks up, it only freezes as long as you have a character with 100% health or more. So this is definitely Paladin Cecil's time to shine. He wants to be above 100% HP in order to get his buff, so you're countering the orb while you're at it. But you will be taking a lot of brave HP damage. They have a lot of HP damages, they do it very regularly, and therefore you're going to need to be able to heal this off, which is why the combination of characters like Ramza and Cecil, or Gabranth and Cecil, work really well, because you're reducing the damage you take or healing it back off again relatively quickly, so that orb does not tick down. And then certain HP thresholds, and I've been using Tonberry Troupe's sort of infographics here because they're flawless and they're really helpful, so definite shout outs to those. I know I've said it before, but definitely check out their website if you want a written version of everything that I'm telling you here, because they just do it so well. They get these pink flames appear above them, and when they do that, they have to be launched in order to get them out of it. And if you don't, what they do is they gain HP and drain it from you every turn. Not their turn, your turn as well. So they're going to be gaining health and draining yours really heavily until you launch them, which is why you're expected to bring a character like Kais or Ramza again or Cloud, and you just need to deal with that the second you see it. Otherwise it's going to be an absolute nightmare. So once you've dealt with that, you've then got to just keep it up. They do it 3 times, so they do it at 80%, 50%, and 30%, and they do it 3 times each. So you need to be able to launch these at the ready when you hit these HP thresholds. We have the ability to see these HP thresholds now. Use that to your advantage. If you're using Ramza as your launcher and your only launcher, he's fine, he can work. And if you don't necessarily want to bring Kais, and you have him, I know that I said that Kais's cool abilities aren't as useful because in a launch team you're probably going to use him in your party. But in this case, it's actually quite helpful. Like if you have his smash support, that's an extra launch. And there's lots of little things you can do. Cloud as an LD call, because you have access to his finishing touch as an extra launch. What you kind of just need to combine everything all at once in order to beat these. It's really difficult, but it's certainly not impossible. And again, it comes down to you just need to have the right characters, because this event is going to boil down to who you have available. If you don't have some of those characters, other alternatives that you can use. I plan to use Kefka if I don't get Gabranth, because he has the instant break. He has the HP silence, which the Flame Masks aren't immune to, so you can kind of take advantage of that as a form of protection. He also has the debuffs that will lower their speed, make it easier to handle. It's just a nice one that you can bring along with you. And then past that, my first team will probably be it will probably contain Ramza, Cecil. If I get Gabranth, then him. If not, then it'll be Kefka. And then on the second wave, it'll probably be Cloud, Kais, and then Ramza, so that I can have Ramza on one side and maybe not the other. It's a balancing act, most definitely. So I was thinking about, sorry, I was going to put Ramza in the right side. I'm thinking of taking Penelo in the left side, because she can keep everybody healed up. She has the speed ups. She can reduce bravery to 0 as well with her EX, so that's handy. And then for the final event, it will be Cecil, Ramza, and then either Kefka or Gabranth, depending on whether I get Gabranth or not. So hopefully that helps you guys plan at least a little bit for Transcendance. But I do very much encourage you to check other videos out that have cleared the content, so that you can do what I do and just watch and absorb and take all the knowledge in, because all I'm really doing is relaying information. Or you can look at written things like the Tonberry Troupe's website or anything like that, Reddit posts, all sorts of things like that, and have them next to you when you're doing this content, and it will help you make it easier for yourself. Whew. So that's it for this video on Dimensions End Transcendence. If you want to know more about Gabranth and whether you should pull for him, especially considering that he is quite so strong for this, but he's less strong after this, apart from his LD call. His LD call is amazing. Then you might want to consider watching my Should You Pull video for Gabranth as well, in relation to DET1. I won't be doing this video quite as in-depth every time a Dimensions End Transcendence comes out. I'll probably still separate it from the character, because it's quite so much more content than usual. But this time around I wanted to explain what DE Transcendence was, how it worked, what the rewards are, how the mechanics of it all are, as well as going into the event itself. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. Sound off in the comments below and let me know who you're planning on taking to each of the gates of for DET1. And of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notifications for any future videos I might be making. So that's going to be all from me. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Take care.